So, let me pick up where I left off. The reason I'm doing these videos is because I'm seeing a lot of YouTubers that cover anime or talk about anime, but they're not genuinely interested in informing their viewers in the same way that a journalist would make the effort to inform above everything else. A lot of these anime YouTubers are generally a lot like how I was back in 2007 when Gen collapsed and the home video market for anime collapsed after the bubble burst, which wasn't too far off from the beginning of the global financial crisis, now that I think about it. And at the time, there really wasn't anyone talking about how the crash was affecting things, you know, in retail, save for a random post on Anime News Network about stores cutting back on inventory, liquidating inventory, and that whole thing. So, being that I was on a message board at the time, and I started digging around, I started talking about it and sort of started following the industry from there on out. And basically, I was basically just, you know, doing my thing on the message boards. I had a soapbox, people were willing to listen. I had some grounding in business, having owned a few businesses at the time, and and then I had just come back from Japan, so double that. And then I started talking about it, and people genuinely believed what I had to say. And then, so I went that step further, and, you know, I started, you know, making all these wild-ass proclamations about, you know, who's going to save ADV, who's going to, you know, what's going to happen to what's going to happen to anime, you know, in retail and all this. And I'm like, and looking back on it, you know, these anime YouTubers are doing the same thing that I was doing. You know, I was just, for the most part, I was just making up bullshit out of whole cloth, with a couple of nuggets of truth buried in all the bullshit. And you know, it's like, you know, I see the cycle happening again, and it's like, why does this need to happen? We don't need to go through this cycle of bullshit anymore. This isn't 2007 where people had less access to the Japanese internet, and, you know, more and more people read Japanese. More and more people are able to keep up with these sorts of things. We don't need to spread bullshit about the industry that we already know isn't true. So why do these people get on a soapbox and spread the same bullshit that I was spreading in 2007 as if it was fact, when we already know it isn't true at all? And, you know, being that I've been a journalist for so long, I look at these videos and I'm thinking, we already know what you're saying isn't true. Why do you keep spreading this? And then it hit me, and it's the same reason I did what I did in 2007. It's because you want it to be true. You know it's bullshit, but you want it to be true because it confirms your own bias. And once I started to realize that, you know, after I was sat down by a few key people in the industry, and they would basically sit me down and say, if you promise not to tell anybody about this, or these numbers that I'm about to show you, this is what's going on. So I agreed, because I wanted to learn once and for all what was going on. And after I sat down with these people and talked it out with them, I'm like, okay, if what you're showing me is the actual truth, then I was way off, and I apologize. And after that, you know, my entire my entire uh, my entire stance on everything changed, not only for the better, but I started to understand that not only was I way off on a lot of things, and it was just that the way I thought the industry worked back then is nothing like the way it works now, and the way it works now is nothing like what these people seem to think the way the way they think it does. And with fans wanting to support animators and stuff like that, I understand that you want to support the bottom of the rung, but the biggest thing you have to understand is that you cannot affect change as an outsider when you have no direct access to these companies yourself. And the only way you can affect change is by either A, having a company that's willing to invest thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars into a property in order for it to be developed in a way that you feel comfortable with, or developing some sort of intellectual property that you can sell to Japanese companies that will turn around and develop it into a multimedia franchise and make millions of yen on merchandising and licensing. Or what you can do is start your own company, or you can invest your own money and start a company. And if you have holdings in the stock market, if you have oil money, you can position yourself as an investor and buy your way in to a production committee. We've seen this before. But the problem with both of these avenues is it doesn't allow for the regular fan to participate, and that's the point. Fandom isn't an avenue for direct support of much of anything other than consumption. Your job as a fan is to enjoy what's being put out. Your job as a fan isn't to assume that you know better about how to run an animation studio better than the people that form it. You have to understand that animation studios run on a very hierarchical and very established system that is very resistant to change. Right now, the only studios that are outliers in the very, very entrenched very entrenched system of payment for animators, or studios like PA Works and Kyoto Animation, where they actually had to restructure their entire company from the ground up to be able to support things like an hourly wage and generally more sane working conditions than the rest of the animation industry. And what pains me to see in a lot of these with a lot of these anime YouTubers is that we still have a long way to go before the industry can sort of shift to the model of a Kyoto Animation or a PA Works on a consistent basis, because those companies actually had to do a lot of internal restructuring to where they didn't have to depend on outside bids for work. in order to do that. And not every company can be a Kiro Animation. Not every company can be a PA Works. And this was even a revelation even for me, because until fairly recently, I was convinced that streaming was going to be the panacea that was going to that was going to make the difference for animator salaries and working conditions and everything else. But what streaming is doing is it's stratifying the stratifying the entire process even more. And it's forcing a lot of companies that would normally just rely on licensing to turn around and develop the infrastructure for in-house production. Because there's so many bidding wars going on for content that a lot of companies are just turning around and saying, why are we engaging in these bidding wars for content when we can just turn around and build the infrastructure for our own in-house productions and save that money and put it towards stuff that we make for our own platform. And you're starting to see this now with Crunchyroll, with the parent company Elation doing their own thing, having their own studios in California and Tokyo. And what I'm seeing a lot of with that is this idea that because they're going in-house, they're shifting money away from licensing Japanese content. And I can tell you for sure that that isn't the case. And that this year alone, that they're actually doubling down on investing and licensing Japanese animation. The in-house studio is part of a longer-term project for Crunchyroll and Elation in general, to have a pipeline for animated work that normally would never see the light of day. You know, stuff like you know, people that normally wouldn't have the opportunity to pitch a show will now be able to pitch something and very likely have it produced and distributed by Elation and Crunchyroll or Verve, depending on which platform it would be a more appropriate fit for. And getting back to my original point, this idea that one takes away from the other is complete bullshit. Because again, these are businesses that rely on having multiple avenues for programming and generating revenue. You can't just depend on licensing. You can't depend on licensing content forever. At some point, you have to have a roadmap for developing your own content, your own properties, your own series, in order to maintain a competitive advantage. Because Japanese animation, with the output that it has right now, what's happening is what happened at the peak of the home video bubble in the middle of the 2000s, where you had companies like the company formerly known as AD Vision spending upwards of $250,000 per episode on something like 0091, which was a rather simple OVA anime adaptation of the 0091 manga from the creator of 009. Now, this anime adaptation was pretty simple, but I mean, it was highly stylized. It was, you know, people called it James Bond with tits, and for the most part, they were right. I mean, the character design was eye-catching. The action scenes were fun, you know, but it was still, I mean, 0091 isn't worth $180,000 an episode. Looking back on it, you know, you know, that much an episode for what amounts to 6 episodes of a very generic spy thriller action isn't worth that much. But that's how far distributors and licensors were willing to go back in the day to finance and distribute what they thought in their minds were going to be hits, to keep the revenue coming in and to keep the home video sales going up. And me, and I'm in there as a fan, trying to follow everything and trying to trying to be like this sort of like expert and all this, and I'm looking back on what I said and I'm like, man, I didn't know shit back then. I don't know why these kids now think they know shit when they don't know anything. And it's just frustrating to see, because I know these kids know better. I know they know better, but they just choose not to think about it because they think they're right and they want to be right. And that's the entire issue. It's them wanting to be right to prove to themselves that they have influence, that they have authority, and they really don't. Compared to some of the people that I talk to on a regular basis about this stuff, they really don't know very much, if at all. I mean, I would really like to sit down with these guys on YouTube and just really figure out where they're getting all this information from, because it really reminds me of what I used to do. And let me tell you something right now. It doesn't end well, because you're gonna have people that are gonna call you on your shit, and the people that are gonna call you on your shit, they're going to be the ones that actually know what they're talking about, and they're going to either let you dig the hole even deeper, or if they really want to be nice to you and if they really want to help you, they're going to just pull you aside and just say, "Hey, man, I know you're smart and I know you have a lot to say, but I can tell you right now, everything you're saying is bullshit. So I'm gonna be straight with you. You can either ease up on the soapboxing, and I'll let you in on a few things. If you just promise me to ease up on your soapboxing, because it's really just not, none of it is true, and I'm just going to be polite with you and just have you sit back and just I'm not gonna call you out I'm not gonna call you out on it in public, but I'll just tell you right now, if you keep soapboxing like this and I call you out, I'll make sure that nobody takes you seriously again." And then he showed me a few things, and it was after he showed me those figures that I just decided, you know what, you're right. Okay, yeah, I buy it now. Okay, what you showed me is enough. And that did happen to me a couple times in 2010 and in 2009. And those were some of the hardest lessons I ever had to learn, because I wanted so badly to be right that I was willing to forsake my integrity and my reputation. And since I was starting out as a journalist, I didn't really care, because I thought I was the badass. I thought I was just gonna trample over everybody and just be the guy. And I'm here to tell you, man, I've done this for over a decade. Going off and saying that Crunchyroll is gonna do this and Crunchyroll is gonna, spend less on anime, and no, just stop, because you're not right, because you're wrong, because you don't know anything. You don't know how this is actually going to work. You don't know anyone at Crunchyroll that is going to give you that sort of information. So it's just best that you stop now before you dig the hole even deeper and you start losing integrity. And I know I shouldn't be talking, and I know I shouldn't be telling anime YouTubers to preserve their integrity. But what you have to understand is these YouTubers, they have an audience, they have a captive audience, and they're working so hard to maintain that audience that they're going to say things that are just completely untrue in order to maintain it. Which is a lot like what I did back in 2007 and 2008. You know, I would spin so much shit just to tell people what they wanted to hear. And it never works out. It really doesn't. You know, I could have been the guy that just, you know, hauled off and started spreading like rumors and leaks and shit, and I could have done that easily, and it would have been fine, and it would have been okay with me because I didn't care at the time. But now that I've actually done this, now that I've actually put in the footwork, put in the hours and the days where I barely had enough to eat to make sure that I had a career. These anime YouTubers, man, they're just, I don't know why they're given the attention that they're given, but if they don't knock it off with the blatant spin and the lies, they're going to lose a lot more than their integrity. They're going to lose a lot of opportunities that I wish I had when I started. And you know, which is not to say I'm not appreciative of my position now at Crunchyroll, because I am very much so. But that position didn't come without a lot of hard work and a lot of perseverance and a lot of late nights. And I'm pretty sure these YouTubers aren't even doing that much work. But who am I to judge at the end of the day? You know, these are kids, they got their own thing going, they think that they're on the right path, they think that they have a platform, they think that their opinion is worth the same as a fact, when it really isn't. But you know, I can't sit down with them and tell them, you know, what you're doing doesn't work out, man. You know, it just doesn't work. If you really want to know something, just ask. You know, I'm pretty sure they'll be willing to tell you in confidence if you just ask. But since they're not willing to do that, and since they're willing to just bullshit their audience in an attempt to curry authority, I just don't see how it's gonna work out well for them. You know, I mean, you know, because it all goes back to wanting to be seen as an authority figure, as an expert, and there's ways of doing that without bullshitting your audience and without bullshitting people. And it took me a long time to figure that out. But you know, far be it from me to say that these guys are gonna crash and burn or whatever. For the most part, they're just going to keep doing it until either someone higher up than me or an actual industry figure steps up and just says, you know, knock this shit off. You know, you're spreading bullshit, knock it the fuck off. Because that's pretty much that's pretty much forcing the issue, is because there's a lot of noise out there, and right now the noise is dominating over the signal. And hopefully with these videos, I want to be sort of the signal that dominates over the noise. I'm not sure how successful this is going to be, and I know I'm rambling right now, but in due time, I do want to have more of a coherent structure for these things, because I'm really tired of seeing all these kids on YouTube spouting bullshit, because we already went through this cycle once back in the mid 2000s. I don't want to go through it again. We have all of the information that we've gotten over the past 5 years. I would have killed for in 2007, 2008, and 2009. All of the information, all of the access that we have right now, all of the visibility we have right now, I would have, had I had the same amount of access and visibility right now that I did back then, I assure you that I would be in a much different place right now with my career than I am right now. In terms of just where I would be in the industry, the level of the level of acceptance I have, and all that. But that's a topic for another day. For right now, that's what I wanted to address mainly, was just how YouTubers are basically recycling my playbook and they don't even realize it. And and I'll tell you that playbook doesn't work. The best way to be an expert and to be an authority figure is just to go out of your way to learn as much as you can, and then disseminate that information to as many people as you can, with the desire to dispel myth and to dispel the myths and to dispel incorrect information. Because had I actually approached what I did in the past with an earnest effort to inform rather than an earnest effort to be right, I can assure you my entire career trajectory would have been totally different from where it is right now. And I can't say if it would have been better or worse. I can only say that it would be different. And with that, I'll leave it there for right now, and I'll see you guys later.